Hi there and welcome. It's nice to have you here and thank you for coming along to visit Old Cape Cod with Steve. I'm Steve and today we are going to visit the old Barnstable Railroad Station in Barnstable Village in the year around 1880. Back in the day, Barnstable Village had been a village for over 200 something years, 250 years. It had been in existence as a little town on the north side of Cape Cod, where the little harbor was great. They could get boats in and out of there, packet boats, and people were doing fishing along there or what have you, and they survived nicely without the railroad for a couple 150 years. And then something magical happened. Along came the railroad. It started got to Sandwich, Massachusetts in about 1840, somewhere in that area. They had a great big glass manufacturing plant in Sandwich that required tons and tons and tons of beach sand. And of course the railroad saw that as an opportunity to make a few bucks, so they brought some track down to the Sandwich area. And one thing led to another, and they ended up doing all of Cape Cod. By 1880, you could ride all the way from anywhere over the bridge, train bridge, onto Cape Cod, through Sandwich, through the various villages, and you could go all the way to Provincetown on the train. It had a spur that went into Hyannis. It actually went out, once it got to Hyannis, it crossed Main Street, went across another major street, South Street, and it went right down to the ocean and went out into the ocean onto a wharf where they picked up fish and they brought down ice for the fishing packets and what have you. And they picked up merchandise from the islands to be transported off Cape via rail. It wasn't until a few years later that you could actually take a train into Chatham, Massachusetts. The rail went down as far as Harwich, and it proceeded on to P-Town, Orleans, and Wellfleet, Truro, what have you, all the way to P-Town. But there was a fishing enterprise in the town of Chatham that sparked interest, so they made a spur off the main line there in Harwich, and it went through Harwich Center and East Harwich, and it eventually made its way down to Chatham, where it picked up fish and dropped off passengers if you wanted to go to Chatham back in the day. But that was one of the things that you had to wait for, because it was after the railroad was heavily infested on Cape. It was 7 or 8 years later, 1887, 1888, they made that little spur into Chatham, and that covered all of Cape Cod. They had gone the other way into Falmouth and out to Woods Hole on the other side, so the Cape was completely covered with railroad tracks. And you could go most any place you wanted to, and within limits. Once you got to a station, you pulled into the West Barnstable station, or any station, and you looked around and, geez, I got another 5 or 8 miles to go to get where I want to go. And if you didn't have a friend, relative, or somebody meeting you at the station, well, the next thing you do is get on the stagecoach, horse-drawn, of course, and they would take you to the local villages around. From West Barnstable, you could go over to Centerville and Osterville, and from the Barnstable Village Station, you could go most any place you wanted via stagecoach and various connections. If you just wanted to stay, you could, or wanted to continue on, you could. So it's kind of a nice little lifestyle there. The people, of course, depended on the railroad. The merchants in town there, they got their there's merchandise, there's stock from the railroad and the packet boats, but mainly the train would come into West Barnstable Station, and the merchants would actually close up the shop and run down the street to the station and get whatever packages that were offloaded there for freight and take it back to their store, and of course hope to sell it. And of course the children would come from far away, as far as they could come from. They'd run to see that big locomotive. That was the biggest thing, of course, on Earth right at the time there. The steam belched out of it, and goodness sakes, it whistled, and it had a big bell, and it was huge, and the kids just loved that, you know. So that was a big attraction, and you know, the adults enjoyed watching it too, I'm sure. And it, you know, would pull into Barnstable Station, and people would get off, and other people would get back on, and it would continue on down Cape to the various other towns and villages that it would pass through on its way to Provincetown. And then of course it would turn around and come back and do the same thing for people going off Cape. Before the arrival of the railroad, of course, your main mode of transportation was a horse. You threw a saddle on him or got up on his back, or you hitched him up to a wagon, or if you were really lucky, you had a nice little buggy, and that was your mode of transportation, which was dubious at best, I guess. After a good rainstorm, while the roads were, of course, horrible, and in the muddy season, coming in the spring, my God, you couldn't go anywhere. Unless you went afoot, you can get out and walk, I guess. But those roads were really impassable, and it was a tough time. But people, of course, it was state of the art, and people got by. They just did what they had to do to go here and there. But of course, when that train came, that was a big improvement. It used to take, if you went by stagecoach, it would take you all day to get to Boston. My goodness, you'd have to leave at sunup, and that thing would bumpity bump over raggedy old roads, and had to stop every couple of hours, change horses, and good Lord, if you had to go to the bathroom, well, you did the best you could and hoped you made it to the next stop. Of course, the train, you get on the train, it was nice in the wintertime, it was nice steam heat, nice and warm. You usually had to go pee while you just went down back to the train. Then they had a little potty, and you could go, you know, right in there and go do your business and come out. And of course, there's nothing but a hole in the floor of the train, and all of that good sewage just went out on the tracks, and that was the end of that. Nobody seemed to care back in the day, and it was a great improvement for travel. Goodness sakes, you can just imagine yourself, you know, riding along in a stagecoach, and no heat in the wintertime, no windows to speak of. All they had was some burlap roll down to keep the wind and what do you call it out, and the dust. In the summertime it was dusty, and oh my God, it was a chore to be had. But then again, it was state of the art at the time, and people just didn't know any different, so it was the way it was. I hope you enjoyed your visit of the railroad in general and the West Barnstable area of Cape Cod. We'd like to thank you for coming along, and hope that you'll like us and subscribe. We try to put one of these out once a week on Saturday with different aspects of life on Cape Cod in yesteryear, so to speak. So if you have a minute and would like to like and subscribe, we'd definitely appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you again the next time on Visit Old Cape Cod with Steve.